Well, good morning, good evening, whatever time it may be that you're joining me and Stephen here on Speaking by Faith. We're so glad that you're here. We hope that you brought your Bibles and you're ready to study God's Word. We are still in the book of John. We are starting off this week in chapter number 4. And today we're going to do our best to try to get through verses 1 through 6. To start the context of the Samaritan woman at the well. But that's where we're going to be at today. Stephen, you got anything you want to add or talk about before we get going?
Nope. Let's kick it off and let's run with it, man.
That's right. It's the Lord's Day for us, so I hope everybody, I want to mention, I hope everybody's had a good Lord's Day, a good worship service. I think we don't really never talk about that much on here, but me and Stephen normally record on Sundays. We try our best, but I hope everyone's had a good Lord's Day. I've had a great one, a very uplifting one, really. That's normally me and Stephen chit chat about services before we start recording, but we never share that with y'all. But we just hope that y'all have had a good Lord's Day. I'm gonna quit talking so we can. All right. Like I said, we're in the book of John, chapter 4, and I'm reading from New King James Version, and we're going to be reading verses 1 through 6. Therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself did not baptize, but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son, Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. So, here at the beginning of chapter 4, and I done told Stephen I've been so busy this past week, I don't have no notes typed up, so I will be looking down a whole lot at my commentary. But so this chapter 4, it tells a wonderful story of Jesus, his encounter with this Samaritan woman. And it also shows us that God's will was for everyone. Samaritans, it was for all people. His gospel was for everyone. And what we're going to notice at the beginning of this chapter, especially when we move on into the story with the Samaritan woman, that Jesus becomes the giver of living water. So verse 1, therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John. Although the Pharisees have not been mentioned in the verses prior, we need to take note to that word therefore. And just from listening to other preachers and doing some study, and I'm starting to learn a little bit about grammar because I was not a very good student in school, but that word therefore is what they call a grammatical bridge. So it's connecting everything to something that was before. So obviously that's how we know that it is connected to Jesus' success and the discovery that the Pharisees had learned about it. It's connecting everything before that he was talking about. The next thing we need to pick up on is the Lord. Some translations, instead of having the Lord, it's Jesus, and it's I don't know. I'm New King James has the Lord, but I think NIV has Jesus there, and I don't think that's really nothing really big. It's just translation. Um, the word Lord, the Lord or Kyrios, it's probably just like a polite form of addressing Jesus, or how we use "sir" today. You can see this in chapter 4, verse 11, 15, 19. There's many, many more. Or it can be indicating an heightened appreciation of him. Uh, think about Peter in chapter 6, verse 68. It's the same thing. Thomas, doubting Thomas. What does he say in Luke? I know Luke's account, he goes, my Lord, my God. No, that's in John. It's John 20:28. Yeah. My Lord, my God. It's just Jesus' deity here. But it's nothing in the translation. It really don't matter. I don't think it matters. I think some translators just translate it a different way. Is all. Do you have anything on that?
Right here, verse 1, John 4, verse 1 is interesting because when you really look at the different phrases, and to me there are 4 different phrases. Obviously, when the Lord knew, so I think this idea of the Lord knowing, dealing with His omnipotence, dealing with His omniscience, rather. He knew all men, John 2:24 and 25. But I think this know right here is dealing more with knowing certain facts. And so it's interesting here that when he knew, the second phrase is the Pharisees. Normally John will try to differentiate the Jews dealing with the people in authority, like a chief priest, a Pharisee, or the lawyers, or whatever, with the people who are Jewish lineage. And so it's interesting that he's going to actually draw a distinctive line between a Pharisee and even other groups. And so he's saying right here, inside the Lord's omniscience of knowing, yet I think right here he's saying that it's interesting that, he knows all things, and now he knows that the Pharisees are actually the ones that had heard. The Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John. Evidently, there's going to be a controversy is going to pop up here. And I think the Pharisees are going to try, and we'll see this a little bit later on, especially as you go through John, really, that they're going to try to really push down John.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to continuously make him of less effect, and then Jesus is going to come to John's defense, and even he's going to say later, that there was none greater born among men than John the Baptist. And so it's interesting that you begin to see kind of a rift forming here. And so also the rift then is in verse 2. It says, though Christ himself did not baptize, but his disciples. So obviously that means that by the authority of Jesus, many are going to be baptized, the same as John. Now, I think it's interesting here that normally you don't see or read anything about John's disciples baptizing anybody. You read about some in Acts 19 who were baptized with John's baptism there. But you don't really read about John's disciples baptizing anybody. And so right here, though, you see a distinction between what Jesus would do and was doing and what John was even doing. And so there must have been a lot of talk and a lot of gossip there by the different authorities. And obviously, as you go through the gospel accounts, there's going to be more of that distinction given. But he's just trying to, I think, give us a few breadcrumbs to begin to show that there's going to be some controversy that's going to come out later against John the Baptist.
And that's what this commentary, he kind of hits on that a little bit in verse 3, where it says, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee, meaning Jesus left. And the idea behind that word left is, a couple of commentators have said it's a very strong word. It marks a definite and intentional break. And Westcott said that the basic idea is that of a leading anything to itself, to its own wishes, its ways, its fate. And so this guy goes on to ask, why did Jesus make such a break from Judea? And one of his reasonings, that might have been was because the popularity of Jesus, as reported in John 3:26, was creating jealousy in some of the disciples of John the Baptist. And Jesus didn't want any appearance of rivalry between them. And so I kind of, there it is. I'm aware.
Your second one of the day, too, man. You had another one a minute ago.
Really? See, I don't be paying attention. But, that kind of makes sense. I've never picked up on that. I was wondering, when you started talking about it, I said, man, that makes sense what these people are saying. That there's this kind of, you're going to start seeing a rift, and they're going to try to, I would almost say it almost might be that they're trying to pit one against the other, maybe.
Yes.
A little bit, you would think.
Yes. Yeah.
And Jesus ain't going to have it. He don't want to, I think he done the right thing by leaving and going somewhere else. I think sometimes these Pharisees also get a bad, what's the word? They get a bad report sometimes, because, they're looking into Jesus, looking into John. But, I think we do forget, they did have a job to do to look into such religious things of their time. I mean, they did have a sort of authority to look into religious matters and things that's being taught and said. But we know by reading the Bible that their heart was in the wrong place a lot of the times. And they weren't doing it for the right reasons, really. What he said here, they were religious authorities and made it their business to investigate anything that might pose a threat to them. I think that was their problem, a threat to them. They took their authority, their positions to investigate because it was a threat to who? It shouldn't have been to them. It should have been a threat to God, God's law. But it was always, their heart was always in the wrong place. But these Pharisees, they was always investigating. They investigated John the Baptist. They went to him and 20 questioned him. But they was doing it. But I think a lot of times they had the authority, but their heart was just in the wrong place. That Jesus himself was not baptizing, but his disciples were. A lot of people in the denominational world see Jesus didn't baptize. He wasn't doing it. Well, just because Jesus didn't baptize, man, it wasn't that he didn't say that it's not important or it wasn't essential. It's just the fact. It's no different in Paul in First Corinthians, chapter
1.
2. Is it 1? Chapter
Yep.
1. But because these people, it was dividing people. Because I think that's one main reason why we didn't see Jesus really baptize a whole lot of people, because he didn't want the people to be like, well, Jesus baptized me, and this old whatever Peter or whoever baptized you. Jesus baptized me. Because Jesus probably knew how men think. We want to have a hierarchy. Who's got more stripes on his shoulder because of this or that. No different than Paul. He didn't want nobody going around and saying that. That's the way I look at that. It wasn't that Jesus didn't baptize people to try to take away from baptism. Because if it wasn't important, he wouldn't have done it. He wouldn't have been baptized himself anyway. And you done mentioned about the disciples were doing the baptizing. He baptized many, but they was doing it. Jesus was doing it, but they was doing it by his authority. That's what we need to understand. I think you done hit on a little bit of that earlier. What verse are we on now?
3.
Well, I've already talked about he left Judea and departed again to Galilee.
Let's go into 4.
On that?
Let's go into 4.
Yeah, because look, we got to move quick because I've wasted enough of our time today. Anyway, verse 4. But he needed to go through Samaria. I didn't really know this. I forget what sermon I was really I preached on. But I never knew that there was such tension between the Jews and the Samaritans or Samaria. Like you start reading a lot of that, these Jews, sometimes they won't even cross through Samaria, even if it was a shorter route to get somewhere. Sometimes they would go way around just to keep from going through there. And there's a lot of history on why is because why they had such hate for each other. is because it's back during when the Jews left the last exile, which would have been who, not the Medo-Persians when they got out.
The Babylonians.
Yeah, Babylonians.
Yeah.
When they left there and they started rebuilding, ones in Samaria, they wanted to help them rebuild, and they're like, no, y'all can't come help us rebuild. And then they got mad and wanted to come, and they tried to slow down the building of the actual temple. And then it just got so bad, they wanted to build their own temple on their mount, and it just they hated each other for it. I mean, it was just all over. It goes way back. I forget how far. Who was the? But that's why it was like. But he needed to go to Samaria. He had to go through there. That's why it was such a big thing for him to even go there. Do you have anything?
I mean, normally for me, what I've always kind of gone at from the Samaria angle is that they were intermarrying heathens. They were intermarrying infidels, and so by and large, they were people who were viewed as unclean individuals, both ceremonially and they joined themselves to an unbeliever. They were viewed as a sinner because they rejected God's covenant people of Israel. All those kind of things, and but this journey that he went through was a very straight way, and Josephus says this was that this journey is called a trail of haste, and this would take a normal about 2.5-3 day trip, whereas normally if they went around it would be like a 5 or 7 day type thing. So evidently, though, he was trying to go somewhere very quickly. And then verse 5, I'll read that. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Sychar is likely Shechem, which holds significance as it is the capital city of Samaria. Acts 8 and the conversion of the Samaritans is believed to have been mainly focused around Shechem, and one of the earliest church, earliest church apologetic people was called Justin Martyr. You may have heard of him. He was a Samaritan from Shechem, and so this is kind of his thing. So Justin Martyr later than Jesus, obviously, but he records several things in his writings about how Christianity was viewed. I believe probably from a more of a Samaritan standpoint personally, but the Samaritans were never seen in a favorable light, even when they turned to Christianity, because even then the Jews saw Christians as sinners too, because now you rejected us to the nth degree, even in religion. So Christianity also was very. I think it flourished probably more so at this point in time in this area than it would eventually go into Jerusalem. And then you read about Acts 1 and to the farthest of the earth. But I think that the teaching of Jesus here is going to flourish very, very strongly before his own people. And I think that's even John 1 where he says that, where Christ... John says about Christ that his own people did not even receive him.
Yep.
Now, Jesus, though, was from Galilee, which is and you see it kind of even in the writing here a little bit. It's a sister district, I guess, if you want to use that, or province. And Galilee also had a very bad reputation too. Galilee was seen as a place that was where the uneducated, the heathen, the sellouts to Rome, that was Galilee. And so Samaria was seen as kind of the sellouts to Jerusalem into Judaism, and Galilee is seen as an area that's a sellout to the Roman Empire. So both these places right here, where Christ is from, and where he's going to really, it would seem to direct a lot of his efforts are going to be in the areas of kind of in the margins. He's going to be in the areas that are not accepted by the typical Jewish populace.
Yeah, we kind of see that a little bit in Acts. I think it's Acts 1, Acts 2. Yeah, it's in Acts. When they first start speaking in tongues, they're like, "Aren't these Galileans?" Because they was
correct.
One of the things is like, they're speaking in our language. And a lot of people, is like, well, they knew that they wasn't from there, but they're speaking different. But another thing to look at is that like they're uneducated men. How do they know all these different languages? We can all how they know it. Hence, why it was a miracle.
Sure.
I mean,
sure,
it
right.
was something done. I mean, they were surprised that these uneducated men knew all these different languages. That's very neat point that you brought up there. I didn't think about it till you said it. So I really, that's a good point. Good point. How these prominent Jews look down, even though they were Jews in a sense, they still look down on them, and how sad that was, and how God's people, Jesus' own people, just rejected him. And I heard Go ahead.
Well, it is interesting that when you look at the context here, because he's dealing with how the Pharisees had heard. So obviously there's a discussion going on between the Pharisees. And it's interesting here that he left. It would seem to be that discussion of some sort where the Pharisees are around, the super religious. And even by his actions, before he says anything. Now he's going to say some more, obviously, later on in John 4 here. But even by his actions, he's going to take himself away from this self-righteous behavior, and he's going to go to the other extreme, and in their mind especially, and go look out for the ones that are really lost. Because the Pharisees didn't believe that they were lost. Obviously, Luke 15 goes more into that detail, but how they really were lost and everything. But I think it's interesting that he's just right now his actions of just simply is moving away is going to be very against even the Pharisees.
Yeah, it's sad how they just. Anyway, I think we're on verse 6.
Yep.
Now Jacob's well was there. I thought we forgot. I wanted to mention something before we move on. We need to remember also this is where Joseph. This area is where Joseph's bones was buried too, right? In that Sychar, that's where he was buried at. Verse 6. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being weary from his journey, sat thus by the well, and it was about the 6th hour. And there's a good bit about that word. Where's that? Wearied. It's the idea that he was really, really tired. It was the shortest journey, but we need to remember this area was probably a rugged terrain. It was probably hard to travel, and he was just really tired. Here it is. The word weary is a perfect active participle, and conveying the idea of labor or growing weary from work. And the perfect tense emphasizes his state of weariness. He was tired to the point of exhaustion. So this travel, it must have been a fairly hard terrain to cross over. So he was really tired. He was thirsty. I don't think he was just trying to make conversation, whatnot. He was thirsty. He was really wanting something to drink. We see that, and in about the 6th hour. We do need to realize that this is using they was using the Jewish time, not Roman time. If it had been Roman time, it would have been about 6 p.m. But the Jewish time, it was the 6th hour, so it was at noon time. It was the middle of the day, hot, so it was probably hot, and he'd been traveling, so he was hot, he was tired, he was thirsty.
Yep.
Other than that, that's all I got, really.
Okay.
While Stephen is trying to figure out, we also need to see this is another way that John is showing us that Jesus is a man. He was fully human. He just wasn't some God spirit Spirit, walking around, never got thirsty, never got hungry. John is showing us the human nature of Jesus. He was tired and he was thirsty. So that's it's showing that he was fully human, and God was transformed. He became flesh. The Word became flesh. John 1:14. I know you're distracted.
That's my dog trying. He's got to get out of his kennel. It is interesting that when he's very talkative. That when you look at this, to me, you even see kind of a very small, very quick portrait of how Jesus is gentle, because he could have, in talking or hearing this discussion from the Pharisees, he could have said, "Be quiet." As the Son of God, as God's anointed one, he was already pronounced as this is my beloved Son whom I am well pleased. He's already had that public announcement made on his behalf from God himself. And then he's not going to go over here and go into this area. Jesus could have gone anywhere. And he could have gone right even to Jerusalem and beat down the great hall of Herod. And he could have said, "Let me in, and I'm going to take authority over this. And don't you know how unrighteous you've been, and how evil you've been working, and don't you see how hateful you are toward somebody else?" He really could have done that. I think it was within his right as God to do that. But yet, we see that instead of going in that direction that you and I may have chosen to do, like if we were given if you and I were given the power of God for an hour, what would you do with it? And so It's interesting here that he instead goes even in the opposite direction. As you mentioned, he's going down a very strenuous pathway, and we know that he's going to come down, and I believe it's coming down to try to find one person. And that would be the one at the well. And that's in verse 7 there, which we're not going to get there today because we're already out of time. But it's interesting that he's already going to make the effort to do this. And so instead of going going for the majority, which he had the full right to do so, and stir up the population and say, "Follow me and look at how strong and mighty I am," he's going to go into the opposite direction. And it's interesting here that when you look at the life of David, is that when David was being persecuted, he also left Jerusalem, and he went into these outer areas. He went to the Philistines. He went to other areas that were not favorable for a Jew to be in. And so it's interesting here that Jesus is going to kind of make a similar circuit, in a sense, kind of redeeming even what David was doing. And so he's going to show everyone that as the king, it's not always about who has most authority, which is a very against, and also then that plays more of a political role outside of a Jewish mind, and then it comes out in John 6 a little more at the feeding the 5,000, and then even more at the cross where there's that accusation about you say you're a king of the Jews, and so you have a lot of that back and forth here. But it's interesting that Jesus would choose to do this particular way, and I think that shows how gentle he is.
It shows his nature, right?
Yes, right.
The love, right? If he'd have come down and been some warmonger, this and that, but he wanted people to love him. And if he would have come in and beat down, like we could have went to Herod's door and beat it down, and if he'd done stuff like that, would they really have loved him? Would they truly would have loved him? But if he come there and I think we see his true nature, his love, his kindness, his mercy.
Right.
I think that's what we see there.
Right, and really, to me, to me, I think this is a really neat picture that we have to continue on later on, because I know that you're out of time. But it's really interesting here that when you look at that Jesus is going to work with somebody, a woman, a Samaritan, I'm sure the order would probably be a Samaritan first and the woman second, and then he went through the outlands third. I mean, the 3 or 4 or 5 things that you can probably name off. That's all going to be very just friction. Create a lot of friction there, and yet he's just going to show us how far he's going to go for one person at this point in time. Also, he's going to go the farthest anyone would ever want to go at the cross. But I think he's just showing us, just what it looks like to do this.
It is. Well, look, that's all the time I got, guys. We started too late. I pushed it back, and I got another Bible study to go do here.
There you go.
But we're so glad y'all joined us. I know it's kind of short, but sweet. But there's a lot of stuff, good stuff in there.
Yeah.
And Stephen, I want to everybody, think about what Stephen said. We see the true nature of Jesus here. What his, the love, his kindness, his mercy, his gentleness is what Stephen said. We need to take that and spread his gospel to everybody. Be gentle when you're going to people. Don't try to hammer down on them too hard. Show them love, show them kindness. Be gentle. Show them mercy. I think that's the main lesson we need to take today and apply it to our Christian lives, is to be gentle like Jesus, man. Be like him. Imitate him.
That's it. Well, you want to close us out then, so you can get on the road there?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We love y'all. Please continue studying your Bible. Follow us. Keep up with us. Our videos we try to update every week. Share them. Study along with us. And don't forget to pray, man. Y'all pray every day, 2 or 3 times a day if you got time. And y'all just hope to see y'all again next week.
Yeah. And I agree with Alex, and hope that everyone has a good rest of your Sunday and rest of the week. And God bless you.